Nowadays, debate is often hostile or shallow. We want to change that. Here at the Waterloo Forum, we promote open, robust, and respectful debate. And there is a place for debate on university campuses, especially in a time like this. The University of Waterloo has the opportunity to lead in this space, and that's what we're trying to do with the Waterloo Forum. Just to give you a little bit of history about our organization, the Waterloo Forum was founded this summer. We ran a pilot event at the end of July. Some of you were there. Thank you for attending. And now we're running our fall flagship event right now. And we hope to be around on campus in the future. We hope this is the first of many debates on campus. We hope to host debates on a number of issues, not just artificial intelligence. So you can see up on the screen here, these are some of our contacts. We have an Instagram page. We also have a website that we just launched. There you can find more contact information. Our YouTube channel, we have the recorded video from our pilot debate there, so you can check that out. And finally, our email address too. So if you have feedback from tonight, if you'd like to get involved, you're a student, please just shoot us an email and we'll respond quickly. I also want to talk about sponsors too. This event requires funding and mentorship, and so we've received that from several sources. I want to highlight the University of Waterloo Office of Research. They've given us a generous operating grant. They've also offered us some mentorship, some direction with how we're running this group, so we're thankful to them. We're also thankful to WUSA, the Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association. They've also given us an operating grant. Students helping students is one of the best ways to create culture on campus. So we're thankful to them. And finally, we're thankful to Fady Law. They've provided some of our audiovisual equipment. So yeah, that's our sponsors. So now let's talk about the debate motion, because that's why we're here. There we are. That's our motion. So AI is present all around us. We talked at our last debate about how students use AI on assignments, and we debated the pros and cons of that. But AI, it shows up Google Translate. People use it to write emails. Lots of businesses are promising huge dividends due to efficiencies that AI will bring. We see it in the financial sector, gaining an edge on the stock market. And maybe most importantly, people use AI to think for them. That's becoming increasingly prevalent. And so some people say, many experts say, that artificial intelligence has the potential to change the very foundations of how we live. And you can see in those ways that I outlined. One of those foundations that we take for granted is our democracy, Canada. We don't think about it, but if we were to do some self-reflection, I think we'd be very grateful that we live in Canada, that we live in a place with democratic institutions. We're thankful for free and fair elections, an independent court system, social services, and a charter of rights and freedoms. These are all things that we really appreciate. So in a time when we anticipate the change that AI will bring, the Waterloo Forum puts forward the motion, be it resolved that artificial intelligence will undermine Canadian democratic institutions. Now, before I introduce our debaters, we're going to try to do something special. We've got a lot of tech running tonight, so I ask for your patience, but we're going to try to run a poll. Okay, we want to poll all of you on what you think about this motion. Do you oppose it, or do you think it's right? So we're going to run a poll now. If you can bring out your phones and get ready to scan a QR code, we're gonna see if this works. So we'll get the guys at the back there to put up the QR code, and then we'll get you all to vote, and we'll see how the audience lands on this question. All right, so we're going to show the responses. Wow, a very split room, almost 50-50. This is remarkable. Okay, the field is in play. The field is in play. Do we have the second question as well? I'm under the impression there's a second question. No? Okay, cool. We're going to ask if you guys were open to changing your mind, but hopefully you are, because we said bring open minds. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we're going to try to do a poll at the end of this debate as well and see if opinions have changed. That's the idea with this. So thanks for your patience with that, and we'll see how the debate goes. So now, I want to introduce our debaters to all of you. We have a great slate of professors here from the University of Waterloo. So I want to introduce our proposition side first. This is the side arguing in favor of the motion. And first up, we have Dr. Jesse Huey. He's a professor in the Sheraton School of Computer Science. He's also the leader of the Computational Health Informatics Lab, a faculty affiliate at the Vector Institute, and a member of the Waterloo Data and Artificial Intelligence Institute. So please welcome Dr. Huey. All right. Joining Dr. Huey on the proposition side is Dr. Matthew Silk. Dr. Silk is an instructor in the Department of Philosophy here at the University of Waterloo. He's also a member of the Waterloo Data and Artificial Intelligence Institute, and he recently published a book called An Inquirer's Guide to Ethics in AI. So please welcome Dr. Silk. So an impressive proposition side requires an equally impressive opposition side. So we haven't disappointed you here. First up, we have Dr. Paul Ward. Dr. Ward is an associate professor and associate director of software engineering in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering here at the University of Waterloo. He's also a faculty fellow at the IBM Center for Advanced Studies, and he holds 2 patents. So give him a round of applause, please. He's got some support here. That's good. Did you bring?
I possibly have some students.
Okay, so you planted supporters in the audience.
I did not plant anybody.
He emailed us.
Okay, hey,
I emailed the mailing list because I was asked to email.
I encourage you to do this. So, bam, people are showing up for you. This is good. This is good. Okay, all right. We also have Dr. Florian Kirschbaum from the Sheraton School of Computer Science. He's also a member of the CRISP group and an NSERC chair in data security. So please give him a round of applause. All right, so let me just go over the format very quickly. We're going to have an opening round of speeches. These are going to be 5 minutes each. Then we're going to go into a round of rebuttals. That's going to be 3 minutes each. Then we're going to have a moderated debate time. I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to try to get some back and forth discussion happening. Then we're going to get some questions coming in from all of you. And then finally, we'll have a closing round of speeches, 2 minutes each. So actually, this is an important note. If you have questions that you want to ask during this debate, the website that you just used to do the poll, that is also the website that you can use to ask your questions. Again, we have a QR code up there. It's the same website. So have that up. If you have a question, submit it. We've got a team looking through those. They're going to send them up to me, and we'll make that happen. All right. So let's get things started here. Dr. Jesse Huey, you are first up.
All right. Let's just see if this works. Yeah, works good. All right. Well, thanks, Jordan, and for inviting me for this very interesting debate. I'm really glad to be here. Is this working? Yeah. Good enough?
Good to go.
Okay. All right. So I propose that AI will undermine Canadian democratic institutions because it has no skin in the game. To see why, consider a fairly believable future in which AI is playing a major role in Canadian government, and in which people believe AI is something emergent and super intelligent. That is, a majority of people believe AI is somehow inherently truthful and also somehow superior to anything human. The more of our reality such an AI is in charge of, the less room there will be for human communication and freedom. Even worse, the AI has no way to judge the cost of a mistake with respect to the outcomes for the humans because it has nothing to lose. It has no skin in the game. Instead, it is the AI's wealthy designers who must judge these costs. AI will serve the same purpose as the Sibylline books did in the Roman Republic. Closely guarded by the aristocratic Senate, their revelations, as communicated by those who had access to the books, had a heavy influence on Roman life. Let's see how this happens by considering the motion in reverse. So first, what's an institution? Well, it's an ordered pattern of behavior of a large group of people. It exists over time and possibly involves some physical artifacts like chairs and buildings. Further, institutions may be part of wider systems. For example, the courts of law are institutions within themselves, but also play a role in governance. Institutions are a distinctly human entity, and many forms of political organization are possible within them. Okay, what's a democracy? Well, it is precisely one such form of political organization, and some of democracy's core values are communication, which includes debate, consensus, dissent, and delegation; equality, which means opportunity and participation; and freedom, which means a lack of coercion. Democratic institutions uphold these values in their use or support of democratic political systems. So now we can ask, how would Canadian democratic institutions be undermined? I suggest this could be done by weakening one of these core values: communication, equality, or freedom. For example, if we restrict people's freedom sufficiently, at some point we'll have to stop calling it a democracy. So finally, what is AI? Well, AI as we know it today is a computation that finds a complex mapping from a set of inputs to a set of outputs. The mapping that an AI finds is not going to be perfect. For example, it might be a mapping from a set of symptoms to a set of diseases, and it will get some diseases wrong, and it will miss diseases in some people. The way in which these errors are distributed in the space of the outcomes for the people involved is not under the control of the artificial intelligence, but rather exists outside of the AI's reasoning space in the heads of the designers. For example, the prescription of some treatment based on a possibly faulty diagnosis involves many groups of people and a wide range of human values that are impossible for AI to estimate because it has nothing to compare these values to. It has no skin in the game. It has nothing to lose. It's only the human designers who have skin in the game. The human designers are the ones who will lose their jobs if the AI performs badly. So now we can ask, well, who might these designers be? Well, AIs will not be equivalent, and I suggest those with more resources will be able to build better, more super intelligences than anyone else. Those same wealthy people will then be also influencing the government and related institutions by pushing their own flavor of AI. Those AI will then be delivering the Sibylline truth to the people, hampering human communication and freedom of thought. I will no longer believe my neighbor telling me the world is round when a super intelligent oracle is telling me otherwise. So where are we? Now we have a super intelligent AI designed and controlled by a small group of wealthy people, making important decisions for a large group of people through institutions like health, education, and law. We have exchanged the rule of a free people by the people, that's a democracy, with the rule of a caged people by the rich, an oligarchy. Therefore, I propose that AI, because it has no skin in the game, will weaken freedom and communication in important Canadian democratic institutions, thereby undermining these institutions and our democracy.
Thank you, Dr. Hui. All right. So now we're going to move to our opposition side with Dr. Ward. 5 minutes on the clock.
Okay. So, I was first asked, is AI a force for good? And we had to narrow this debate topic down because good seemed a bit too broad. And we narrowed it down to democratic institutions. And I had actually been on the side that I think AI is good. And when we changed the debate, it's like, well, no, I don't think it's going to undermine stuff. And I'll start with, what did I do when I was first asked about this? Well, I did what any sensible undergrad would do. Ran off to my favorite LLMs and started asking it for the arguments, okay? Seemed like a reasonable point. Why would I do that? Because I implicitly trust everything it says? No, of course not. I don't trust the LLMs any more than I would trust Google search. But I do find it a heck of a lot better than Google search because it actually starts answering questions in a conversational way. So I can have a conversation and I can push back. And the first thing I started doing is saying, well, give me some history of democracy. What are the democratic institutions? What's AI? Because to me, AI is a tool. It's a tool that helps me do my job. It helps me do my job better. Democracy, broadly, I would actually agree with our first speaker. I think broadly, he's got it right, okay? Democracy is not two wolves and a sheep arguing or voting on what's for dinner. This is technically democracy, they voted, but not the democracy we want. It includes things like freedom. So I totally agree with that. The problem I have is this isn't the first democracy that's existed. We're not even the longest running democracy. You probably have to go back to the Roman Republic for the longest running democracy, and last I checked, they didn't have AI, and it happily fell to pieces. It fell to pieces without AI being involved at all. AI, like any other tool, will be used for good, and it will be used for bad. Why is it used for good or bad? Well, yes, it doesn't have skin in the game any more than a gun has skin in the game. It has no values. The person that uses it has values. The use of it expresses those values. Now, Jordan, in opening this debate, said, we're all just going to believe this AI. It's going to do our thinking for us. Well, okay. I'm not sure what faculty you're in or what department you're in, but I'm going to hunt down who's responsible and make sure you can't graduate until you understand that AI can't do your thinking for you. AI is for a conversation. AI can't do your thinking for you any more than mum and dad can do your thinking for you. They do your thinking for you when you're this high, but our democracy is in serious trouble if we grow up and mum and dad are still doing our thinking for us. We will have democracy for as long as we are willing to defend democracy. And on that particular score, I would point out that our democratic problems in this country are in fact deep and fairly depressing, okay? You mentioned the Charter. Our beloved Charter means that unlike the country I grew up in which supremacy of Parliament determines things, we in fact have 9 unelected individuals from an extremely eclectic background. I don't see any plumbers on the Supreme Court. I don't see any cooks. I don't see any lumberjacks. I see people who have mostly got arts degrees and went to law school and shook the right political hands. So decisions are getting made by people in very questionable ways. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time, otherwise I'd get into the problems of the Democratic parties too. But for me, AI is a tool. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. I've just been notified by the tech team the question link is open. If you tried to submit a question earlier and it didn't work, now it is good to go. So that's all set. Yeah, all right. So now we're going to move back to Dr. Silk, another 5 minutes.
Hello. Okay. So in 2024, there was an outbreak of foodborne listeria in Toronto, Ontario, resulting in 3 deaths and 20 sick. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency hadn't sent an inspector to the site in over 5 years, despite repeated reportings of listeria on site. This is because the CFIA switched to an algorithmic risk calculation system to determine the most efficient way to send the very limited number of food inspectors required for food inspection in Canada. The system removed the ability for inspectors to visit a site at their own discretion. In other words, an automated system designed for government efficiency helped weaken oversight of a life or death public service. Democracy is more than a system of voting. And the institutions of democracy are broad in scope, including legislatures and regulatory agencies who make laws and carry out the public will, the police who enforce the law, the courts who interpret and adjudicate it. It also includes an engaged and informed public debate, meaning that schools and universities play an important role to play in supporting democratic government. Indeed, I think it's helpful before we get too speculative on the roles that AI may play in Canadian society to consider some of the roles that it already has played. In addition to food inspection, it's reported police are using facial recognition and predictive police algorithms. The Canadian courts must deal with AI-generated briefs or AI-generated material being entered as evidence. Immigration Canada uses machine learning to help process visa applications, and there's AI assistance in civil service hiring. In Canadian universities, not only are students using AI to do work for them, potentially risking the creation of a credentials crisis, but their professors are using AI to verify if students are actually doing their work or using AI to do their work, or in some cases even do the grading for them. If undermine is taken to mean erode, make less effective, or less able in any way, then it's already a fact that AI has undermined democratic institutions in Canada. However, I think we want to make a stronger claim that this problem will get worse, and that AI will undermine democratic society in Canada by weakening public trust and eroding accountability in democratic institutions. AI will not only undermine trust in institutions, it sets the stage for this to happen by contributing to political polarization and tribalism through means of collaborative filtering and generating potentially false evidence. This weakens trust in government and, more importantly, in ourselves. We need look no further for evidence of this than a story from last week about a municipal councillor from Clarington accused of sending death threats through their voicemail to a mayoral candidate who later claimed the message was generated using AI. AI has created a liar's dividend, and polarization undermines our tendency to want to extend the benefit of the doubt in cases where there's political disagreement. As Canadian government institutions increasingly look to AI to reduce cost and increase efficiencies, we run the risk of incentivizing politicians and voters to accept opaque decision-making processes that will erode accountability in the environment already primed for mistrust. We can turn to a case south of the border where a woman with cerebral palsy had her personal support hours cut despite no change in her condition after the state adopted an algorithm to determine the most efficient use of healthcare resources. The state official who provided her results could offer no explanation, but this is what the computer's telling me. Once the lawsuits began, intellectual property protected the company who created the algorithm from revealing how it worked. Indeed, the company's CEO rejected the idea that an algorithm should be understandable to the public at all. "It's not simple," he said. "My washing machine isn't simple. You're just going to have to trust me that a bunch of smart people determined this is the smart way to do it." Later, it was revealed that the algorithm wasn't even trained to recognize cerebral palsy. It's no secret that Canadian governments across the country are stretched for cash and desperate to find efficiencies, creating a strong incentive to make further use of AI for decision-making. But efficiency at the expense of accountability is not a neutral trade-off. It's a slow corrosion of the very principles upon which democracy rests. Once trust in our institutions erodes, it's very difficult to rebuild. We've already seen how automated systems can weaken oversight, obscure responsibility, and leave citizens powerless to question decisions that affect their lives. This is a problem that we believe will get worse before it gets better.
Thank you, Dr. Soap. All right, now for our final opening speech, Dr. Florian Kirschbaum, 5 minutes.
All right, so I'm not as well prepared, but let me try to make this interesting. I think we all heard that democratic institutions are under threat, are eroding, and I think no one here is contesting that. The question is AI significantly contributing to that or not? So let's take the case that we just heard of the Listeria. Right? So they implemented an AI system that decides where to save money, where food inspectors should go. Imagine you would have implemented that system without AI, but still would not have allowed food inspectors to go without confirmation of the system. would that have not have had the same consequences? So is the effect that the people didn't go and checked the listeria cases due to AI or due to a failure of a system being implemented? We know how to govern AI. We know how to build systems. We just need to do it properly. And whether or not we do it with or without AI doesn't change the principles we need to build those systems upon. So AI is a wonderful tool. We've heard another example, and there's a great example. So misinformation, that is actually the one that I assumed would be coming up the most, right? So we see all of these generated images, and they make us believe, right? However, these images don't make us believe. There is this very famous case where people said, like, oh, there is an explosion at the Pentagon, and posted a picture on Twitter, X now. And the picture wasn't even of the Pentagon. And still people believed it. Okay? So it's Julius Caesar back when said, men believe what they willingly believe what they wish for. It is certain lies that we are more likely to believe than other lies. And we have to investigate ourselves of which lies we are likely to believe. There was the question that courts are confounded with fabricated evidence. Courts are supposed to check the evidence. Some of you might have seen Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon is trying to hire an actor to cover up a lie that Leonard earlier made to Penny. You might remember that episode. Many of you might have not seen the movie Arbitrage, where an attorney forges some evidence such that the accused actually goes free, although he actually committed the crime. So fabricating a believable lie, and we hopefully have courts that examine the evidence, else this would be an erosion of democracy before AI came into place. AI should not fundamentally change the way we are able to deal with court cases. In the same way, we have misinformation everywhere, right? Misinformation doesn't go away if AI goes away. If you take away AI, there will still be misinformation on Twitter. Actually, the whole purpose of Twitter is misinformation. They make money off of it. Yeah? And you can even extend that. Do you actually believe what a political candidate tells you in an election? Well, you might want to check the double and want to see what he says or does after the election. Yeah? So there was this case that people believed the Chinese government was influencing the Canadian election, and there was a big fuss made about it. In the end, if you ask the officials, the influence was so negligible that it was not worthwhile mentioning. It doesn't change much, right? In the same thing, if you go with targeted evidence, a big machinery that only gives you certain pieces of information, it can reinforce your beliefs, what you already believe. Cambridge Analytica was able to predict what you were voting, not to change what you were voting. Yeah? So we have to see all of this. Is AI at the root cause of these issues, or is it not?
Thank you, Dr. Kirschbaum. All right, so that was quite a stimulating opening round. We're now going to move to our round of rebuttals, and the purpose of this round is for the debaters to integrate what they've heard throughout that first round and to respond to comments that have been made all across the board. So we're going to go in the same order again, and yeah, we'll start with Dr. Hui.
Thank you. Thanks. And thanks to Matt and Paul and Florian for all your interesting comments. So I'm going to, I heard the Roman Republic mentioned a few times too. That's good. All right, so I'm going to just address a couple of things that Dr. Ward said. You talked a little bit about that people think that AI is going to do their thinking for them, and that's ridiculous. But the problem is that people do this, right? So I saw an ad on TV last night for GoDaddy AI, which builds a website for you. And the catch line was, look like you know what you want with GoDaddy AI, right? I find this both infantilizes people by making the implicit assumption that they do not know what they want, and it degrades people by telling them that GoDaddy AI somehow does know what they want. Then I want to address the comment that you made, the argument that you brought up about the gun, right? It's not the gun that kills people, it's the person with the gun. So I wanted to relate that to the metaphor of the calculator that I've heard many times. I think it's roughly the same argument. That is, the argument says that, well, calculators didn't take away our ability to do arithmetic, so they didn't bother anything. They just made things a little easier for us, right? And so then you try to map that to AI. Well, AI is the same thing, you know, it's just doing something, it's doing some calculation, and we can rely on it as a tool. But I think this metaphor is invalid, because the claim is that people do not lose the capacity to do arithmetic just because the calculator was invented. First of all, I'm not sure that's true. Second, the example is fundamentally different than AI. Calculators do arithmetic, which is fully and completely determined process to the extent of the functions that the calculator can perform, obviously. It's not doing number theory. That is, if I ask my calculator 2 + 2 =, it replies 4, I can go and verify the answer and we'll find it to be correct in 100% of the cases. That is a deterministic, there is only one answer for that according to our mathematical systems, right? If I go and ask my AI, you know, should I should I marry Betty or Sue? And it replies Sue, I cannot go and verify the answer without admitting that I will never know what being married to Betty would have been like. So I think that I'm going to have my last thing there. I wanted to talk about Caesar's comment that people willingly believe what they wish for, right? One of the issues with AI is it is heavy on confirmation bias. It'll tell you exactly what you want to hear. So this makes the problem worse, not better, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Hui. Round of applause. All right, now an anticipated rebuttal from Dr. Ward. 3 minutes.
Okay. First of all, I want to start with the issue of AI has no skin in the game. That's great. That's true. AI has no skin in the game. I submit to you the Canadian judges have no skin in the game. Canadian judges are currently ruling all kinds of cases where if the consequences affected them, I'm willing to bet they would judge very differently. People are dying because of rulings by Canadian judges, okay? I submit that the average Canadian federal government bureaucrat has no skin in the game. They are insulated from the consequences of their actions. I submit that we saw this in spades during COVID, because the people giving the orders were people who had desk jobs. They were keyboard warriors. It didn't affect them what they were ordering. I submit that as far as misinformation is concerned, we have a litany of misinformation from both the left and the right that long predates AI. I'm still not sure whether the Dr. Theresa Tam believes we should or should not have worn masks, because she literally said we shouldn't wear masks and 6 weeks later said we should, and did not at any point ever say, whoops, I made a mistake. At no point was it stated that there was an issue there. Death by COVID among children under the age of 18 was 1/5 of what death by drowning was. Did the Canadian Public Health Officer order all children to go around wearing a life vest at all times? No. We closed schools. we arguably did one of the worst things we could in life. This was not to benefit the rich boomers. It was to benefit the rich entitled boomers. Why? Because the rich entitled boomers all had nice big houses and they were fine. If you were a poor boomer, you might be living in a nursing home in what Niall Ferguson called a cenocide, a killing of senior citizens. Nursing homes were required to take people regardless of COVID status, even though we knew this was a disease that was disproportionately going to kill people. These problems all occurred long before AI. This has nothing to do with AI. The problems in our democracy are completely unrelated to AI. I pick on those because those recent examples look plenty of other misinformation. Nuclear power is uniquely dangerous. No, it isn't. It's one of the safest forms of energy we've ever created. So problems aren't with AI. Problems are with people.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. As a reminder, you can keep submitting your questions. The portal is open there. We're now going to move to the proposition side again. Dr. Silk, 3 minutes.
So I think there's a couple things we need to kind of clarify. So no one is claiming that things were hunky-dory and then AI came along and ruined everything, right? Like we all, misinformation obviously existed prior to AI. The question is whether AI is making that problem worse. And even if you're the kind of person who thinks that, you know, all things being equal, will likely evaluate things using good evidence and be these like, you know, rational people all the time, which isn't really true. There's a bigger problem when it comes to the fact that these things will make the problem worse, right? The question isn't whether AI will, or sorry, well, whether democracy will fall apart or whether it was just hunky-dory before. The question is whether AI is going to make these things worse. And the thing about misinformation and AI is that, yes, obviously you can make misinformation without AI, but AI makes it a lot easier to make and spread misinformation, right? So it obviously exacerbates the problem, especially if you're inundated with it to such a point that you can't legitimately, or at least heuristically, determine what might be real and not real without a great deal of cognitive effort. That's just something that we don't, ironically, we don't have time to do that, right? That's why we make AI for these things. The funny thing is that when it comes to, for example, generated evidence, right, there are means of trying to detect whether something is AI generated, but there's an arms race between these, you know, Gen AI producers and detectors that are trying to detect whether something is made by AI. And it may come to the point that we may not ultimately be able to tell the difference. So it's not a simple matter of simply saying that courts should do better. They should be able to know what's real or not real. I mean, if it's technically not really possible, or if it's something that even AI can't like reliably do, then this is going to be a problem. It's not simply a matter of saying, well, we need to be sort of better inquirers about this. Either we have to dramatically scale back the scope of what counts as admissible evidence in court, or there's going to have to be some kind of major change. And of course, even if there are slow reforms, that's going to take a while. And every time a court messes up or does something, you know, amiss, public trust falls apart, right? So it's not a simple matter to simply say, well, you know, courts should do better. And again, going back to this issue about the idea of AI being the root cause of these issues, it doesn't matter whether AI is the root cause. The question is whether AI is undermining these institutions. It doesn't have to be a root cause to be a factor that's undermining these institutions. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Silk. Dr. Kirschbaum.
All right, now we're in my expert area. I actually work on AI security. And if you go to make an argument, hey, we cannot detect if something is AI generated or not, I can tell you that's not true. We can, we just don't want to. Twitter has no purpose of detecting a fake image. They don't want to. We know how to do it, they don't want to deploy it, right? Courts could use all sorts of mechanisms. It's not even necessary. They can easily detect this without these measures. We don't know why AI made the decision or not. I married someone based on AI. I better have asked JTB, why are you suggesting this woman for me to marry me? And it will give you an answer. Because I don't know, right? So we have reasoning models. We have ways of governing this. The internet came out, and people believed, oh my God, this is the end, and cybersecurity is gonna take over, and it's all gonna get so bad, and we're all gonna live in tents, and ultimately it got better. We are able to control technology. These arguments that we are not able to control technology are all not true. I didn't want to debate AI security because I said, until I have people on the level of understanding AI security that I can make as a foundational argument, the time is over. I've lost everyone. AI security is complicated, but it can be done. It can be done. It is not something that cannot do. There are people who say like, oh, there is, it will approach the distribution, and we will never ever be able to distinguish. You are able to distinguish every speaker of you. I can determine, if I have sufficient text of each of you, which text you future wrote. In the same way, I can detect each LLM if I know that LLM. It works. It scales. We just don't know. We just need to do it. We don't do it right. The problem is we are blaming AI for making these things worse because we don't do the proper steps. It's not the AI that is causing that. And it matters whether or not the AI is causing that. It fundamentally matters whether or not it's the process that we are employing AI or it's the AI itself. Because we say the motion is AI will undermine Canadian democracy. Not how we use AI will undermine Canadian democracy. Yeah, the motion is AI will do that, and AI will not do that. It is how we use it. And we can use it in a proper way. I know. I've always made the argument it's easier to detect a fake image than to generate one. And that is fundamentally the case.
Thank you, Dr. Kirschbaum. Much appreciated. All right. So we've gone through our first and second round of speeches. You've heard all the debaters speak twice. You've heard them respond to each other's points. Now we're going to move into a time of moderated debate. So this is where I do my best to get some discussion back and forth. I've got a few questions prepared myself. Yeah, and we're just going to try to have some conversation flowing here. So I want to start out with a question about superintelligence. To prepare for this debate, I chose a book that's been read quite a lot. It's called Life 3.0. It's by Max Tegmark. You have people like Jeff Hinton and others talking about AI taking over the world, becoming this very strong agent that can kind of subvert human purposes. We talk about AI alignment with human values instead of its own values. And I really want comments from both sides. What do you think about this idea of superintelligence? Do you see this as something that we should even be considering right now? Is it a threat? Is it an advantage? I think we'll start over on this side. Maybe I can actually briefly get your opinions, each of you, just on this idea.
Yeah, so I don't think it's super intelligent, but I think people believe that it is. That's what matters. It doesn't matter what the AI is. It matters what people believe it is. So although the AI might not do terrible things, you say, well, it's the people using the AI that are going to be doing the terrible things, right? But that's you can't point the finger at that because you don't know, right?
Yeah, Dr. Silk, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, particularly in the next decade or so, I don't think this is the big concern. A lot of the bigger concerns with AI is more owing to the fact that not that they're intelligent or super intelligent. I'm not even sure what that necessarily means. But the idea that this is just essentially automated statistical modeling that's just not necessarily done very well in a lot of cases, and that's usually where the crux of most of the ethical issues, at least in the next couple years, are likely to arise, rather than superintelligence taking over the world.
Yeah, this is very interesting to have this perspective. Yeah, let's go to the opposition side. What do you think about superintelligence?
So I'm not particularly worried about it at all. The doomsters have been with us, well, more or less since the beginning of civilization. Malthus was wrong, Ehrlich was wrong. Ehrlich was famously wrong. He lost his bet. He had to pay out. People who have been predicting the end of the world have been uniformly wrong. The solution is to use the tool to get, you say people will believe the AI. People also, as I've said repeatedly, believe all kinds of nonsense long before the AI. I don't think that changes. I think the issue is, how do we get people to learn better? And this is where, look, I'm on the negative side of the debate. I don't have to show that AI is actually going to make our democracy better. I don't think it will. It could make it better if we want it to be better. Best argument against democracy, 5 minutes conversation with a voter. But if we want it better, we could make it better by using tools like AI to do those incredibly mundane educational tasks. You're worried calculators have stopped us doing arithmetic. No, the fact that we don't teach children times table in school is why children can't do arithmetic. It's boring to do. Well, you suggested that calculators have made things worse. Maybe I misunderstood.
So, Dr. Ward, what I'm going to do, brief response here, then we're going to go
I was saying the opposite, that I don't think I actually explicitly said that. We haven't lost our ability to do arithmetic.
Then why does AI cause a problem but calculators didn't?
Because it's not, you can't tell if the answer is right or wrong.
But you can't tell if the answer's right or wrong with AI.
You can't, yeah, but you can with a calculator. There's only one answer.
That depends on what the question is that you ask the AI.
Exactly.
And it also depends on how you interact with the AI. I have a conversation with the AI exactly the same way I'd have with a person, and I'm perfectly happy to. I don't have a conversation with one AI.
But you're not the issue here, Paul. You're not the problem. We understand. You know what AI is. You're able to put it away and not believe it. That's not the issue here. We're talking about all Canada and what people are going to believe. It's not about you.
So your problem is the average idiot is an idiot, and my solution, well, okay, however you want to word it.
Not my words.
Yeah. My solution is the old one, which is when some politician says the voters are idiots, the correct answer is we must educate our masters. We must teach them how to use this tool, because it's a tool. It's a tool that is not going away. The genie's out of the bottle.
Do you think they're going to listen to you?
I have no...
These are politicians.
I wonder if this seems to like...
That's a whole other argument.
There seems to be an element of this argument where I think we should also be conscious of the fact that there's an ideal world where you're right. AI could be a tool and it could be this great thing, and ideally we would use it in these great ways, and we would educate ourselves to be really great critical thinkers, and we would carefully appraise evidence, and we wouldn't look to just one source of information. This is something I'm always telling my students to do, right? But there's the question of ideally what people would do and what we would like people to do and what people are actually going to do. There was a case of literally in the news today of somebody who developed what people are calling AI psychosis, right? He came to believe that he was living in a simulation because he had these extended conversations with ChatGPT where ChatGPT was telling him, yeah. And you're so brave for thinking this. Like, what a trailblazer you are for coming up with this brave theory. Aren't you such a smart person, right? So that's the thing. People, ideally, there's what we would expect and want people to do, and maybe what, even as educators, what we ideally would like the world to become. But then there's also the unfortunate reality, which is just that people are susceptible for lots of different reasons to nonsense sometimes.
Awesome. Now, before this goes too far, I fear we've left Dr. Kirschbaum in the dust. So, Dr. Kirschbaum, I want you to comment on superintelligence, then we're going to keep going with this. Yeah.
So before we start, I think we're conflating two issues here. The one issue is an increased digitization, which would work with or without AI, and AI as a component of that. In general, and this will come with superintelligence or other systems, we will have to fight to stay in power and not lose control to digital systems. This is something we will have to do. We will have to do that, however, with AI or without AI. Yeah? These systems, the Listeria example is the typical one. I could just decide a regular optimization algorithm which doesn't use any AI, and I would have the same outcome. So I have to distinguish between, are we relying on systems, and these systems take away our freedoms, or is this a case of AI? So now, superintelligence AI, I think, would require a level of AI that we currently don't have. In particular, it would exactly require what Jesse called skin in the game. I would need to have a connection to the outside world. I would need to be able to see, to feel, to sense, and process that sensory information at an unprecedented speed that human beings are capable of. And we are years and years and years away from something like that. Before that, I would not accept something as a superintelligence. And again, the fact that computers can, or systems can take away your responsibility. It doesn't even have to be a computer. It happened before computers as well, right? We delegate authority to a court. We lose the ability to do it ourselves, right? We introduce all these democratic institutions are institutions that we build, and we will need to keep forming them, and we will need to keep forming them with or without AI. And we shouldn't conflate AI with the systems that we are building. AI is only a component of that.
Thank you, Dr. Kirschbaum. Appreciate that.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
So one thing to keep in mind too is we have to be careful, because you can't claim that it's a tool but then suddenly start talking about it like it's its own agent, right? So you can't say, oh well, we're developing AI as this tool, but we just don't know how to use it right, and we're using it really badly, but it's not the AI's fault. Okay, but if it's a tool and we're designing it and it's making our lives worse in some ways, or it's undermining Canadian democratic institutions, then that's what the tool does, right? I mean, that's what we've designed it. It's not like it's some pre-designed tool where it's a hammer and it has a fixed set of uses. It's something that we've made that is having a deleterious effect on democratic society, because it is a tool, and because we're using it the way we are. Now, ideally, we might say, well, in a perfect world, we'd know how to use it exactly right? In an ideal world, we might know how to use guns exactly right, or nuclear weapons, or even nuclear reactors, right? But sometimes we don't know how to use them right, and sometimes that leads to really bad consequences.
I need to respond to that. Right? We do know how to use it right. We just sometimes don't, right? Nobody says that the internet is free of cybercrime, right? People have been hit, ransomware has been sent somewhere. Even some of you might have had to change their passwords because somebody broke into the password server at IST. And then we got two-factor authentication, all these kind of things. But we can deal with these things. They will not undermine democracy or our institutions in any other way than any other technology would. right? So you say like, oh, we're building AI systems and they undermine democracy. If I would have built the same system without AI, it would have also undermined democracy, right? So I'm confusing cause and effect here, right? I'm attributing something to AI which is not the cause.
Okay. So what I want to do is jump in here. I've got a question that I think will play to what we're talking about. And this is about social media and polarization. So social media, it's had a bad effect on some democracies. I mean, we can look to the South, there's some problems there, even problems here. And that's echo chambers, right? People being confirmed in what they're saying. Other people with the same beliefs and not being exposed to what other people think, being able to engage in a critical function of democracy, which is conversations with people that you disagree with. And that's actually what we're trying to do here today, incidentally. But I'm wondering how large language models play into this. You know, are large language models another way in which people can get their biases confirmed to them? Or is this a way where people can actually be exposed to more information and get past this, you know, idea of talking past each other? You know, maybe it's a way to be exposed to new ideas. So two sides of the coin there. I'm going to go back over to this side, and then we'll come over here. Dr. Hu.
Okay. Yeah. So polarization. I lost my train of thought here. Maybe let me just think. So polarization as the right. So one of the core factors behind polarization is where people hear the information from. So that's very well known in political science and social sciences that that's where it comes from. You hear something from someone you trust or know really well, it's very different than if you hear someone that you don't trust. So if I pick up a newspaper and I read it, do I believe that information? Well, I have the freedom to go and look at a different newspaper, right? And I can have just as little trust as I want in that, right? But if this artificial intelligence is being sold, and I hear this all the time from people, they believe it. They believe in what it's saying, right? They think it is the truth. If they trust it, then you are guaranteed to increase political polarization.
Okay, interesting insight. Dr. Stoke, do you have comments? Yeah.
It's interesting, like, you know, I've heard how different generations use AI sometimes, and millennials have been accused of mostly using AI as a sort of advanced search engine, and that's generally the way I tend to do it. So I actually look to LLMs oftentimes to get like information that I wouldn't normally get, right? But at the same time, there are a lot of people who might go to AI or sorry, go to an LLM to essentially, yeah, have certain things reflected back to us. Now, of course, that's not always a bad thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, you know, getting a bit of an ego boost or a bit of a you know, encouragement, you know, from AI. But it's also a slippery slope in the sense that people can kind of get trapped in their own little cycles of thinking that they're about to change the world with some new idea they have because the AI is locking them into this you know, loop where they're really only talking to them and to the AI, and they're not talking to other people. And ideally that wouldn't happen, but that unfortunately might be the case. And what worries me in the future is that you're going to have LLMs that are going to be specifically designed for this. Either LLMs that are, you know, a conservative ChatGPT or a liberal ChatGPT or, you know, whatever sort of niche interest you have, you'll have LLMs that will be designed to cater to those interests. So that's another concern I have.
Yeah. We'll get this said, responding to that, Dr. Word, yeah.
So, yep, this is on. So, the problem of polarization and the problem of echo chambers is not new, it's not unique to AI. If you lock a person in a room and leave them with a single source of information, it turns out that that single source of information becomes their single source of truth. The underlying issue is how do you address that problem, not AI is the problem. Because as soon as we say AI is the issue, when we focus on AI is the issue, we are missing the real problem. I'd also like to point out, you mentioned I'm too much of an idealist. Okay, at some level I am an optimist, at some level I'm a deep pessimist. Okay, I mean, depends on the day of the week, I suppose. It's funny that you should bring up the ideal world because you probably more than your partner most clearly articulated a series of anecdotes where AI was used for and bad thing happened. But at no point did you say, of course, we know that this bad thing wouldn't have happened without the AI, and in fact, you know, sort of the AI made things worse. I mean, in ECE, electrical and computer engineering, we are using LLMs to do auto-grading. We are using LLMs to do auto-grading not because they get things right all the time, but because they get things right far more often than TAs get things right. Yeah, it's slightly scary, sorry. One day I'm going to write a book. I'm just going to call it Waterloo, the Inside Story or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so the point is, you're comparing AI to some hypothetical perfect world and saying AI is not perfect and therefore it's bad. It's like, I get that, but I'm saying, no, I think AI can be used for very good things.
Thanks.
Yep. Yeah.
Need a response here?
Well, I'll just be brief then. The thing that you have to keep in mind too is that even if you could say that AI is more effective and can produce results more efficiently, even if you can kind of say that, generally speaking, it's even more accurate than humans, the problem is accountability, right? If one of your students was to say, why did I get this grade, and you can't explain it, that's a problem, right? If someone is going through the immigration system and they're saying, why did my visa application get canceled, and the person can't really explain it because they looked at, the system had them examine 1,000 cases at a time, right? Then the accountability is lost, right? And the thing about democracy is that it's not always about what is the most effective. If you want a really effective political system, democracy is probably not your best bet, right? What we want is accountability, right? And that's the important part of democracy, and that's the thing that I worry about slipping.
And freedom.
Yeah. So I'm actually very excited right now because I've thought about this idea of opacity and like not knowing you know, what AI is actually doing. It's a black box, right? And I want us to actually drill into that a little bit, right? Because one of the things about democracy is that you know how decisions are made. People can explain to you why they chose to, you know, vote the way they did, that sort of thing, right? Well, you know, if AI is a black box, you know, so are people to some extent. Humans are really complex as well. Like to a vast extent. And you know, I can get an LLM to explain its reasoning to me. I can get a human to explain its reasoning to me. So in some extent, I just want to know, like, what actually is the difference here? Is it something about agency? Because it doesn't seem to be an issue in explainability. Like, I think you can get to that if you really design a system well. Yeah, get one of you.
I'm just going to jump right in and say AI is not a black box. It is as far from a black box as you can possibly get. At any time, you can look into your AI, whatever neural network you're using, and find the exact state of every single neuron. Exactly. Now, there may be a lot of them, right? Maybe 3 billion of them. But you can still, you know exactly the state of the AI at any time. So it is definitely not a black box. That is a total fallacy.
Thank you for saying that. I was going to jump in. It is not difficult to get the AI to give you its chain of custody reasoning behind any given case if you want to.
Yeah. So this is interesting.
I'm a black box.
Yeah, exactly, right? I'm a black box. We're all black boxes. Okay, yeah. So this is an example of disagreement between within sides, which is cool. So I want you to talk because I think you may be different from Dr. Hui.
So I think in terms of what we mean by opacity and something being a black box, I think we have to be conscious of the fact that that can mean different things to different people. So there's the technical sense of whether a model is interpretable. But even interpreting what a model's doing can mean different things to different stakeholders, right? They might be interested in different kinds of explanations in terms of why a model generated the result that it did. You know, if you're creating a model, you know, what you're interested in terms of why a model produces a particular result might be different than if you're going through a visa application, or if your prof's grading your work with it, right? So we have to be conscious of the fact that opacity can mean different things, that people can want different things from an interpretation, but also that the idea of opacity goes beyond just the model itself, right? You may not necessarily know all of the assumptions that the person creating the model or using AI to derive the model had. Right? You may not know if the person, for example, the person in the case in the States, right? Like, they didn't know that the person, the company that had generated the algorithm didn't even train the algorithm to recognize cerebral palsy, right? And this was kept secret, right? So that goes beyond just the model. It's a broader human thing, right? And to some extent, you're right. A lot of the worst things about AI systems, it's the lack of transparency that goes on, not just within the model, where, you know, maybe we can't explain, you know, you can provide the state of the model, but I mean, whether that's fully interpretable to somebody is in a reasonable way to them is a much more tricky kind of proposition.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for your comments. Appreciate this. I want to head in a different direction because, you know, time is limited. We have time constraints. I want to talk about who is developing AI. All of this leading edge research with AI that's happening at private companies. OpenAI, you got Meta, you got Cohere here in Canada, but none of this is directly from the government. And I'm just wondering, you know, what do we think of that? Is it good that this development is happening in the private sector? Should the government be investing in developing AI, like its own AI, its Canadian AI? Is that something we should be working towards? So maybe we have Dr. Kirschbaum, and I think Dr. Hui, you're invested in this too. So let's go that way. Yeah.
Governments do. So there is an Icelandic LLM, because Icelandic is a language that is spoken by very few people, and Iceland was afraid that with the proliferance of OpenAI and these other companies, the Icelandic language is going to lose its importance, its heritage, and so therefore they trained an Icelandic LLM. There is the attempt at a French LLM, right? There is a lot of debate, should we have a Canadian LLM? So governments do. This is also with all technology, right? So Europe made at some point of the decision that the airplane industry is not to be left to Boeing, and funded with billions of dollars Airbus, which is now a profitable company. But it was an attempt at the ground up to build an airplane industry in Europe. We can make the same decision for AI. Nothing is stopping us, and Iceland already made one. So there is nothing that this development is now driven by companies, but there is nothing matches the resources of the NSA, right? So if you want to see a really large computer with many GPUs, go to the NSA and look at their models. You will not have seen something like that in OpenAI or the similar.
Yeah.
Right. So it is not that it is not being done.
Yeah. So we see a positive spin there, in that, you know, it's preserving heritage, culture, and there's some ability to disrupt the space. Dr. Hui, I think, at least from your opening speech, I would expect a different opinion about having this group.
No, actually, I was going to say, you took the words out of my mouth, really. I mean, I think that industry, you were saying industry and government are sort of separate in some way, but I don't think they are. I mean, it's all sort of the same. So it's not the same argument, but I think, you know, industry is a very, very powerful force in government.
Right. So maybe let me rephrase, you know, democratizing AI. You know, AI right now, the power is concentrated, very concentrated. How do we spread that out? You know, do you think that's possible? Is that something we can hope for?
I don't think so. No, I think there'll be a race to the top.
And does that undermine democracy?
I'd love to be as young and naive as you are. So there's a premise behind your question, and the premise is private sector bad, government good. I respectfully submit that there is probably far more accountability in the private sector and far more rapid accountability in the private sector than there is in the public sector. Companies can and do screw up regularly and suffer the consequences. Boeing used to be absolutely dominant in aerospace. Forget about the aero part of aerospace. Elon Musk has kicked their ass at half the price, okay? How much democratic control do you think you have over government bureaucratic decisions? I mean, Jody Wilson-Raybould discovered that, you know, you could be the justice minister and you could look at a court case and say, I'm not going to interfere with the judicial process, and it turned out that she didn't have the say. A person who was elected because mummy and daddy were who mummy and daddy were had the say.
Yeah.
But we're not arguing whether Canada is a democracy or not, right? That's not what we're arguing here. I don't believe it is a democracy, and in fact, many people don't believe there is no. We're talking about democracy, so things that are attempting to achieve democracy. It's never been achieved, right? It's always a poor sort of stand-in for it that doesn't work very well, right? You talk to your average anarchist, they'll tell you, we aren't in a democracy, we live in an autocracy already.
You don't want a democracy, because at that point you've got two wolves and a sheep fighting over dinner, or voting over dinner. It's not. I would argue that you have an inherent problem, which is the wishes of the people are incompatible with the resources of the people. What's even worse is, frankly, Canadian democracy is Ontario and Quebec getting what they want from the 8 colonies. Okay, it's not much fun to live in Alberta in many ways. Okay. So, right.
Can I,
Yeah.
getting back to the question a little bit. So it's interesting because I think you're right, you know, some points are very right, in the sense that both, whether you're talking about government or private industry, you know, because these people have skin in the game, everybody wants to cover their ass, right? So you'll always have this tendency to want to hide wrongdoing and mistakes and that kind of stuff. So I don't necessarily think that one is better than the other. However, I do think, you know, I had this idea once for like a government-run social media, right? Where the idea is that people would have more say over what the algorithm, how the algorithm recommends content, right? So instead of having collaborative filtering that might fuel you know, polarization, you could have an algorithm that's specifically designed to expose you to views from the other side, right? We might say, well, in Canada, it's really important that, you know, so you could imagine, for example, like a Canadian YouTube, where, you know, Canadians could upload any content they want, like a new, you know, 21st century CBC kind of thing. Except people would have control over what that algorithm does and how it recommends things. Now obviously this idea has a lot of problems too, because there's room for government abuse and arguing about where the rules are, right? But that is a possibility, that you could have democratically run algorithms where people have a stronger say over what they want the algorithm to actually do, and it's not just run for profit for the sake of a board of directors.
Yeah. I want to get to one more topic, and then we're going to get to audience questions, because, you know, we should get those answered. And this goes back to thinking. So, Dr. Ward, you said, you know, what department am I in? I'm in the Department of Psychology. Okay, and in the Department of Psychology, we think about decision making.
Jordan Peterson, your buddy?
I don't know the guy. Interesting in some ways, whatever.
Probably the most famous Canadian psychologist these days.
Yeah. Oh no. Sorry, I don't know the guy personally. That's
Me
what I mean.
either.
Yeah. I haven't been to one of his events or anything, but you know, interesting guy. I want to talk about decision making. Okay. Kahneman and Tversky, these are foundational scholars when it comes to decision making in Canada. You know, Tversky, he was out in British Columbia. Regardless. They brought up this ideas of heuristics, okay? And heuristics being ways in which you make snap judgments. So, you know, if I have some complex decision ahead of me, I can reduce everything down by using a simple heuristic that is going to be right most of the time. And we have these kind of built into how we behave. My thought is that LLMs, you know, artificial intelligence, may become kind of the new heuristic for people. You know, what do you do when you need to make a decision, right? You've talked about this. Go to an LLM. And a lot of this kind of centers around how we use it. But I wonder, let's get away from the average person. Let's talk about people who run democracies. Let's talk about lawmakers, right? What happens when MPs, prime ministers, start to use AI in their decision making, right?
They probably already are.
Right? I mean, the Swedish prime minister, he's doing this right now. Like, he's openly admitted to this. So I'm wondering, is this something that's undermining democracy, or is this actually something that's helpful because they're seeing more perspectives, right? So I'm wondering if I can get comments on both sides, leadership and using AI in decision making. Yeah.
Okay. I think there are two aspects. The first aspect is I can form a decision very quickly, and I do so. This is often also very called a prejudice, right? I have some opinion that is, in most of the cases, right. And these exist all around us. However, I also have the ability to question that decision, right? And that is what distinguishes us from just pure machines. We can ask ourselves, why did I make that decision? And even though you cannot maybe completely determine your process, you can still do the pros and cons, and you might come ultimately to a different decision. The LLM will only give you information. You always have to question it. I think we had the statement before. The LLM cannot do the thinking for you. We cannot build systems, or we should not build systems, where we have critical decisions that rely on AI, right? We have to have the ability to question them. But that is common sense, and we can build these systems. So we just need to address that issue.
Yeah, I want to get one reflection from this side over here. Where wants to take it?
Then we're talking about whether people will believe it or not, right? That's the real question. We're not talking about the AI. It's again coming back to this idea of it as a tool. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. It's how it's going to be used, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. That's it for our moderated discussion time. We're now going to move into questions. So questions have been submitted through our system. I've got a few up at the front here. I'm just going to read them out. So let's get into it. I've got one right here, guys. This is right here. Okay. So this is for the proposition speakers. How will the well-documented gender gap in AI adoption and the potential impact on marginalized communities whose experiences are not often considered by those creating AI systems impact the future of Canadian democracy and the equality it stands on? Whoever wants to take it.
So there's a couple things to consider when it comes to that issue. So first of all, are the issues of implicit bias that can creep into these models, because if you don't have a diverse data set, or if you don't have diversity in terms of people sort of saying, well, do these assumptions make sense? Does this data set actually make sense for what we're trying to train this model to do? Are we missing important things? Are we missing, for example, there was a study about gender shades that was talking about how facial recognition is much better at dealing with people who are like fully white or fully black, but people in between are much more tricky, or black women it struggles even more to recognize faces. And so there's this issue of trying to make sure that there's this kind of diversity within while you're developing this stuff. But then on top of that, there's the question of who might be able to use this stuff once it exists, right? Because a lot of these services are you have to pay for, right? Which means that if you're able to, people who can pay will get better results or be able to use the AI more effectively than people who are less able to pay. And so that will help exacerbate a kind of gap in capabilities and competitiveness person to person. So.
Yeah. I'm actually going to ask another question, I think, to the proposition side. This is another one. The responses mostly seem to take AI to mean generative AI, particularly LLMs. However, AI continues to be rapidly evolving. How can AI's ability to process vast data sets like census information or court filings improve democratic governments? And does this efficiency translate to more trust in democracy? How do you respond to that?
which I'm not totally clear on the question, so yeah.
So it's efficiency through democratic processes. We hate governments to some extent because they're super slow. So,
Right.
if bureaucracy is sped up a bunch, isn't that actually improving democracy? Isn't that like an upside?
Well, faster is not necessarily better. Why would it be? I mean, I think we've been talking about this before, right? I mean, democracy is not about efficiency. If making the correct decisions, or whatever that might be, sure, we want those to be done efficiently, right? I want my taxes to be reviewed quickly, but that's something really clear. There's no sort of judgment involved in it, right? I think once you start dealing with issues that are really human at their core, like freedom, that's where it starts getting really tricky.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is a question for all speakers, so I'll get this side to comment on it. Would your level of concern about AI's potential to undermine democracy change depending on whether the leading LLM labs are based in the US or in another country, for instance, AI being American or DeepSeek being Chinese? Maybe Dr. Ward, start here.
No.
Okay, that was.
I can elaborate if you want.
Dr. Kirschbaum.
Yes, but it is actually not the LLM. DeepSeek is a very interesting case, and we have some research on this. So DeepSeek, for example, by itself, is not biased on Chinese political matters versus what ChatGPT would say. They have very similar opinion. However, if you query DeepSeek in China, in their hosting, it will have a political opinion very aligned with the Chinese government. Whereas if you query DeepSeek in the deployment in Amazon, it will not have a political opinion very aligned with the government, but the same opinion as ChatGPT. Isn't that interesting? Right? So again, it is not DeepSeek. That is, the model is not biased by itself. It is how we deploy it and how we use it that is actually the way that determines it. And yes, unfortunately, I don't like the US, and I would love to have a lot of the things that the US have here, but I still trust the US more than I trust China.
But this sounds to me like an argument for our side.
No, you get me wrong. The AI is not, the issue is not that AI is biased, but who uses AI.
Right,
Yeah?
but you just said that these very authoritarian governments are using it to control the reality of all their people. And you're saying that is
They
not,
control the
that's
real-
not undermining
That
the
is, they're
political
controlling
system?
the reality with or without AI. We are at the issue of correlation versus causation. Yeah? And what all the cases you bring are correlation cases. There is no causation case. The Chinese government is even more controlling TV, radio, the internet, the great firewall of China. Yeah? The AI is one component in that.
But you don't think as a propaganda, or as a government propaganda machine, that is not frightening to you?
That is frightening to me, but it is not the AI that is frightening to me. I particularly took out the AI. The DeepSeek model per se is not biased. It is trained on the same data as the ChatGPT model. It is not biased. It is the way we deploy it that is biased.
Okay, but I'm going to reiterate, I think, Matt's point from earlier, right? The thing that we're building is to deploy it. We are building it exactly to do that.
Okay.
You're mixing correlation and causation, right? Only because the AI is doing something bad, it doesn't mean that it would not have been bad without the AI.
Loosely speaking, the basic problem with propaganda is that it's not true. If it's, nobody's ever needed to propagandize their population that says it's raining out when it's raining out. Okay? So if we agree that that's the fundamental issue, I'm going to say, as the Soviet Union amply demonstrates, and every other society that relies on propaganda, reality has a painful way of intruding. You can only fight against reality so long. So I'm not fundamentally worried at that level.
Okay, I want to ask a question then, because this seems to be coming back to the people that use AI, right? And you know, you have the tool, you have the algorithm. How are you going to put it into place? So one person asked, is there any way that we could meaningfully neutralize the potential threat of bad actors using AI effectively as a tool to undermine government institutions and the trust of Canadians within them?
Yeah, you got to give it skin in the game. It has to know that it's going to die.
Okay, so it needs consciousness, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because skin in the game is not skin in the game for, when I said skin in the game, I mean the big game, not just, so a government bureaucrat does have skin in the game.
So
They
give it
are
a
alive,
video
and they are
feed
gonna
of the
die.
power cord into the electrical outlet.
No, it has to, it has to understand, right, what it means to not be alive. It has to understand what it means to know that something is not there.
That's beautiful, but it's not the only way. There are very many ways in which we can make AI use more safe, more robust, more private. This is not easy, but they do exist. And while the skin in the game might be the end solution to this problem that takes care of them all, it's not the only solution.
Okay. I think what we're going to do now, we're going to move to closing statements, gentlemen. So we're going to go in the same order that we did for our opening round of speeches. This time, 2 minutes, so if we get 2 minutes on the clock. And Dr. Hui will get you coming up first when you are ready.
Okay. I'm ready. Wow. Should have started, I would have gotten an extra 10 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to conclude with the title of a 2010 paper by the sociologist John Levi Martin, Life's a Beach, but You're an Ant. Put another way, your environment determines who you are. If your environment is created by a computer, which is controlled by wealthy aristocrats, then you are no longer free. The quote refers to a 1969 paper by Herb Simon, who was a famous cognitive scientist, and he pointed out that the tortuous path of an ant along a beach is just as much a property of the beach as it is a property of the ant. Your path is partly determined by you, but partly by what is around you. That seems innocuous, but remember that the ground upon which the figure of your life exists, that's the beach, does not come out of nowhere. It is created by the society that you're embedded in, and it determines your own tortuous path. If this ground, the beach, rather than being created organically by society as a whole, is mechanically created by oligarchs, you have lost the true freedom of being human and replaced it with a freedom that only exists within the narrow confines determined by your mechanical masters. Although true human freedom is heavily constrained by society and very weak, it is nevertheless a basic tenet of democracy. Once this freedom is taken away, you might not notice it's gone because you only see the ground in front of you, not the ground that is not in front of you. If this ground, the beach, is created by a small number of wealthy people who, by the way, will be congratulating you for following their predetermined path through it, then you will have traded a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage.
Thank you, Dr. Hui. Dr. Ward, your closing statement.
So I would argue that AI is a red herring. We have problems with our democracy because every generation have problems with their democracy, or at least every generation of people fortunate enough to live within a democracy. I do not envy the younger generation. They are inheriting some messes that are not nice and not fun to deal with. I respectfully submit that if you focus on AI, you are more likely to be in trouble than if you focus on what the core issues are. The core issues are the loss of freedoms caused by the mass bureaucracy in Ottawa that controls your life, the mass bureaucracy in Queen's Park that controls your life, the bureaucracy in wherever Waterloo or Kitchener or the Waterloo Regional City Halls are that control your life. The school boards that control your life. You can send your kid to any school that is in the neighborhood that you are in. Oops, that means you can't. You get to send your kid to the local school. Okay? Well, you can pay for it yourself with whatever money you have left over from the taxes that the government have taken from you to pay for the school of their choice. The issue wasn't AI. The issue was the controlling bureaucracy. It's entirely up to you whether or not you want to deal with that. AI can help you deal with that because public choice theory says the reason you don't get involved is because it costs time and money and effort. And AI can now enable far, far, far more citizens to exercise the freedoms that only the very rich can exercise pre-AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Dr. Silk, your closing statement.
So democracy is about more than elections. The collective decision that we will submit to governance by our peers does not come easily. It requires the means of ensuring that decisions have popular endorsement, that there are systems of accountability, the rule of law, and most of all, trust that institutions will work as they purport to work. If the popular sentiment is that government decisions can't be trusted, that laws will be carried out arbitrarily, that courts cannot be trusted to separate fact from fiction, that we can't trust decisions regarding healthcare, education, or even food inspection, it will undermine the credibility and legitimacy of democratic governance. Combined with increasing mutual distrust of each other and our own senses, these conditions contribute to a perfect storm that will and does, in fact, undermine democratic governance. AI contributes to and exacerbates all these conditions. It doesn't have to be the root cause of the problem to still undermine democratic governance. This doesn't mean that we're predicting that AI will bring about the collapse of democratic civilization as we know it, only that AI is a contributing factor to the many stresses on democratic governance. However, as I've said, trust is hard to earn and easy to lose. And so we must be aware of the possibility that even if democracy is able to adapt to the many stresses of AI, it may be too slow to make these changes before it's too late. The effect of increasing AI means if the effect of increasing AI means greater efficiency at the cost of less transparency and reduced accountability, if the algorithm made me do it becomes the mantra and the excuse not only of government but also of citizens, if the perception is that fairness must take a back seat to efficiency, democracy will suffer.
Thank you, Dr. Silk. Dr. Kirschbaum, your closing statement.
All right, I think we are much more in agreement here than we think. So in the first case, I think everybody agrees that AI is not the root cause. The question is, does it have to be the root cause or not? So it might contribute or contribute not. However, we know how to control technology. We've done that with everything, every existing technology. We've learned how to control it. We've learned how to control anonymity on the internet. We've learned how to control nuclear power. We've learned all of those things. And we have made mistakes. Nuclear power plants have gone up. However, we can move to green energy. We can move to other things. We can improve AI. We can govern AI. So the question is, it is not the root cause. It might contribute a little bit, but we can learn. We can do that. We have to do that. We have to build systems that take humans into account. We have to build safe AI. However, we know how to do that, and we can do that. And so all I submit is that AI might contribute to issues right now that we believe are undermining, the word undermine, right? However, in the long run, we will be able to control, we will be able to use the efficiency, and efficiency is an argument for a government. I'm waiting for how long for my visa applications now? I mean, it is ridiculous, right? So if AI gives correct decisions, or likely correct decisions that are explainable, which we know how to do. The simple question is the LLM. I asked the LLM, why did you decide that way? I have explainable models. I can use decision trees. We know how to do these things. We just have to put them proper in place, and AI will do nothing to undermine Canadian democracies. All other forces will already do that for us, and we will have to continue to combat them. AI, we can control.
Thank you, Dr. Kurtz. Okay, so this has been an enjoyable evening. I think we've heard a lot of interesting ideas. To round things off, we want to hold a poll again. So, yes, man, we've got it queued up already. So this is how it was before. Split, 53-47. Do we actually know which one was which? 53 for the motion. Okay, all right. So we got a poll again. Please scan the QR code and vote as you wish.
I was going to vote, but then ChatGPT told me it was going to ruin my brain, so.
I was told that the
good?
LLMs were subject to confirmation bias, but I asked them and they told me it wasn't.
Okay, everyone's voted. Yes, let's see some results. Ooh, okay. A slight shift in this direction. Is it statistical error? Is it not? We will never know. We will never know. All right. If we can just go back to the last slide there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this evening. I hope you've learned a lot. Yeah, artificial intelligence is an issue we're going to deal with for the rest of our lives. So yeah, hopefully you've got some tools to deal with it here. I'd like to thank the Waterloo Forum team. We have a big team of folks working behind the scenes to make this event possible. Thank you to all of them. You are invited to stay and get some cookies over this way. We got just cookies and water there. Like, grab some. You can grab a few. They're home baked. They're home baked. So, you know, please head over that direction and grab some. Have a conversation. Thank you for coming out, everyone.